minutes and then.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first day and the first webinar of our threat series this over the course of the 3 days. So you hear from some industry experts as we take a deep dive into the ever-changing threat landscape, current trends, and more importantly, knowledge share on best practice for how to optimize your cyber posture. So please be interactive throughout the whole 3 days through all the webinars, and we'll do our best to answer all of your questions. So we're kicking off today's threat series, focusing on Endpoint, and we are joined today by Tom and Mark from Crowdstrike, the Crowdstrike Complete team. But before we do, I'm just going to quickly go over some housekeeping rules. So you will be muted for the duration of the session, but if you do have any questions to ask any of the team on the webinar, please use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll collate them at the end, and we'll go through them as best as we can. This session and all of the sessions throughout the whole 3 days will be recorded, and the recordings will be sent to you via email the next morning, so you'll get this one tomorrow morning. This session is interactive, as I mentioned. There'll be a couple of polls popping up throughout the sessions, and the results will be on the screen. So do please get involved. It helps us to kind of tailor our helps tailor our discussion points throughout the day.
Things going on.
Tom, I think you're on, not on mute. So as you can see, the kind of threat series timeline I've put together. So it's over the course of 3 days. We're on day 1, webinar 1, focusing on Endpoint. And the following throughout the day, we've got email, identity and network, identity and access to web and data. So hopefully you'll join us throughout those sessions as well. So back to this morning, we are delighted to have Tom and Mark with us this morning from the Crowdstrike Complete team. Bytes have been actually working with Crowdstrike since the early days of EDR back in 2017. We've seen their business and technology grow from strength to strength, and their service offerings, which we'll touch on today, have been a core part of that. So some of the points we'll expect to hear from today are driving its successful managed detection and response capability, staying ahead of the adversary, looking at the kind of accelerating threat landscapes and the requirements of the responding to those.
Let's hope we have a licensing issue. I'm just going to drop it in my group chat just to let them know. Can I give you a message once it's been sorted?
Sorry, could everyone just put themselves on mute if you're not on mute already? That'd be great.
We have a licensing issue with...
Some of the scenarios that the adversaries are using today and the kind of techniques we can use to mitigate those. So I'm going to pass you over to Crowdstrike now and straight over to Tom.
Great, thanks very much, Luke. So look, great to be with you all this morning and to kick off this series with the Bytes team. So as discussed, my name is Tom Brown, and I look after the go-to-market strategy for Falcon Complete across the EMEA region. I spend a lot of my time working with organizations, helping them understand more about our managed detection and response capabilities, and then also sort of understanding the challenges generally that they're facing. As we mentioned today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through essentially a few different areas. We're going to talk to the general theme of what we see being really important and what it takes to be successful with regards to delivering a managed detection and response capability, and then how sort of Crowdstrike solves that for our clients. Once I've done that, I'll hand over to Mark, who's one of our senior analysts within the Falcon Complete team, and he'll be going through a couple of detection and response scenarios that he's responded to over the last few months. So with regards to what we're talking about today and the Falcon Complete proposition, a lot of the things that we will talk about will be centered around the speed. So the Falcon Complete team are really able to get operational within customers' environments within real speed, and we'll touch on that. But more importantly, we'll talk about the speed at which you need to move in terms of to be able to detect an incident within your environment, but then also respond to an incident within your environment in order to stay ahead of the adversary. And so that nicely brings us on to the first poll for the morning. Poll question 1, which will be brought up in just a second. Great. So what we've observed through our sort of Overwatch team is that e-crime adversaries are moving with increasing speed. What do you think the average breakout time is over the last sort of 12 months or so? Cool, I'll just give you a little bit longer. Teetering between option A and option C. Cool, okay. So if you put 1 hour 32, you would be correct. So on average, we've seen certainly the e-criminal adversaries, most active as well in terms of motive over the last sort of 12 months or so, operate with increasing speed. So if we look at their ability to impact an organization and move from initial compromise through to lateral movement, let's say 2 years ago, that was looking more like 8 hours. So they've really advanced in terms of capability and their ability to impact an organization. So, so yeah, if you put 1.32 hours, you were correct. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Perfect. So just really driving home on, I guess, what it takes to be successful, and tying in with obviously that question that we had there. Let's look at, first take a quick look back as to the accelerating threat landscape and what we've seen evolve over the last sort of 30 years or so. If we go back to the 1990s, we can see that the attack volume and velocity was pretty low. It was pretty manageable. And in terms of response, we were looking at kind of weeks or months to respond, which was fine because, as I mentioned, the volume and velocity wasn't that high, and the impact to business wasn't as great. Typically, in these response scenarios, what was happening was that an organization was getting notified by a third-party law enforcement organization, and they would basically knock on the door, tell them that they believe something had happened, remove and eject disks, take those disks away for forensic analysis, and then return them sometime later. Hence the extended period for response. We move on to the 2000s. We can see that the Trojans, botnets, and worms have really started to evolve. And we've got commercial organizations, instant response organizations, starting to build out software tooling that helped with incident response. And they were really searching across organizations, looking at indicators of compromise in order to achieve that. And it brought down the ability to respond to sort of days rather than obviously the weeks and months we saw previously. Accelerating through the 2000s to sort of 2010, we saw the evolution and real, I guess, coming to the fore of APTs with groups like APT1. We saw Drydex phishing campaigns really causing significant impact across a number of sectors with their sort of sophistication that we hadn't seen before, impacting vast numbers of end users. At that point in time, I was working with some of the banks, basically seeing sort of or helping them solve for that problem in particular. And we really saw an increase in our ability to sort of respond and the requirement to respond in the sort of 2010s. So in 2011, Crowdstrike came to market and basically provided the capability to stream sort of real-time telemetry from the endpoint, which improved that capability to respond and reduced its sort of hours to respond. Then if we move forward to today and we look at sort of the last 12 months especially, we've seen a huge jump, as just touched on, with regards to the capability of e-criminal groups, which are making up for 75% of the sort of motivations that we see, but also sort of the targeted threats obviously becoming a lot more sophisticated as well with regards to nation state with their sort of motives around economical gain and then also political gain. So in order to stay ahead of the adversary today, we're really talking about a capability that needs to be driven around minutes rather than hours. And you saw the sort of reasoning there with regards to the poll and the fact that within 1 hour and 32 minutes, an e-criminal group could have achieved that breakout time and obviously that disruption to your organization. And here's a bit of a visual representation of what we need to deliver in order to be successful, in order to stay ahead of the adversary. Now, let's have a look at how customers are actually doing with regards to, let's say, a 2 to 4 hour breakout time window. And breakout time is basically from initial access, as it states here, through to lateral movement. And that's all based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Some of the research we did, we saw organizations taking up to sort of 160 odd hours with regards to actually being able to detect something bad within their environment, understand it, contain it, and eradicate it. So straight away, organizations are falling behind. Outside of our research, there was an XDR survey that was and report that was created by IDC at the start of the year, where they looked at organizations with around 2,000 odd endpoints in North America and Europe. And basically what they did was they surveyed those to understand their capability to respond to incidents in their environment. And they found that only sort of 20% of organizations believed they detected something bad with their environment within an hour. And certainly from a CrowdStrike perspective, what we believe is you need to deliver that capability from a detection perspective, sort of within a minute. So there's a big disparity there in terms of the capability of the attacker versus the sort of speed at which sort of InfoSec teams are able to respond. And there's a number of reasons for that, right? I think really people is a challenge for organizations. Being able to hire, recruit, and retain staff is really challenging. I Googled the other day on the government, UK government website, sort of the cyber skills gap, and I think it was 48% of organizations in the UK reported that they had some kind of skills gap. So that is a real challenge. And then there's the complexity of environments as well. So the real sort of shift that we've seen in terms of, I guess, attack surfaces evolving so drastically after the last sort of over the last sort of 10 years or so, and this evolution of zero trust, which has only been a catalyst really since COVID hit 18 months ago. So moving on from there, what are customers doing? How are customers sort of looking to, I guess, deal with this challenge that they're faced with? So more and more organizations are moving towards a managed detection and response capability. So out-tasking the function of sort of protection to experts. And so within CrowdStrike, our team of managed detection and response services is called the Falcon Complete team. And basically what we're doing is we're combining our platform, we're combining our intelligence capabilities from our vast intelligence organization, and then also the expertise. And you'll hear from Mark shortly with regards to the capability that he brings to the table and what he does on a daily basis in responding to threats on behalf of our clients. Before we do that, I'll just take you through sort of a high level view of the Falcon Complete managed detection and response capability. So essentially, what we deliver for organizations is a 24/7, 365 capability. It's a follow the sun capability, so analysts based all over the world. And basically, in order to apply for a role within the Falcon Complete team, analysts must have multiple years worth of experience in digital forensics and incident response, which we heavily vet and check as they come into the organization to make sure they're up to the standards that we need. Because fundamentally what we require is an analyst to be able to run with an incident from the very start all the way through to remediation. Now, our tooling is a big part of that. And as an analyst is brought into the business, they are certified as experts in the Falcon platform from an administration perspective and then also a response perspective. So what you really get from the capability is experts in the cybersecurity domain, but then also certified experts in the platform and tooling that they're focused on and running. We talked about speed at the start and the fact that I did touch on that we were looking to sort of enable a fast start and get operational really quickly within customers' environments. So on average last quarter, across all of the organizations that we onboarded within the Falcon Complete service, we were able to get operational within sort of 10 days on average, and that's from contract execution. So we're providing this capability for organizations really quickly. So once you've made that investment, you're getting value back on it really, really quickly. We take responsibility for keeping the platform up to date, which is a key thing we believe. Obviously, at the start of the contract, we will discuss with you how you want sort of updates to run across your environment, and then we take on that sensor update policy management for you, so you don't have to worry about even the endpoint management side of things from a Falcon sensor perspective. That ensures that we keep everything optimized, and we put governance around that as well, and we report to you regularly within monthly sort of cadences as to how we're doing from a coverage perspective in your environment, but then also how our analysts are doing from a response perspective as well. So moving on from there, in terms of the service and what the team are doing from a monitoring perspective, they are focused on the Falcon platform. It's not a technology only approach though that we take. We're very passionate about humans being involved in the detection and response process. So we augment that sort of technology platform orientated approach with our Falcon Overwatch team, which are 100% focused on threat hunting on a 24/7, 365 basis. We're aligned completely to the MITRE attack lifecycle. And as I mentioned to you and the examples we've talked to, what we're looking to do is stay ahead of the adversary and stop an adversary before they get to stage 8 of the MITRE attack framework, which is lateral movement. Because of all the intelligence that we gather from our incident response work, our intelligence team, we know that if we stop an adversary before they get to that point, they're far less likely to be able to cause significant impact to your organization. That really drives the way in which we investigate on your behalf. So we're looking to investigate all alerts within your environment, and we're looking to basically drive our response process around the Crowdstrike rule of 1-10-60, which is what we believe you need to be able to deliver in order to be successful in this space. So that's a minute to detect something bad with your environment, 10 minutes for an analyst to actually pick that up and start responding to that incident, and then 60 minutes to have actually responded to that incident. And when we talk about response, we're actually talking about taking on the remediation capabilities for you. So on to response, how do we do that? You're thinking, those are aggressive timescales that Tom's talking about there. So essentially what we're using is the platform really, and our analyst expertise to drive that platform and deliver on complex remediation sort of capabilities for you. So we use a tool called real-time response within the Falcon platform to remotely connect to systems within your environment and basically remove malicious artifacts from those endpoints and return them back to their original state in that sort of near real time, sort of around that sort of live response that we were talking about at the start of the presentation. There will be times where we decide or we believe that the best course of action is actually to contain a system, but we have ways in which we manage that process via different sort of security postures that we apply to different asset types of your environment to make sure that we don't cause disruption in your environment. So what we're looking to be really is hugely effective in terms of response, obviously manage any disruption and keep that to a minimum within your environment. So we talked about sort of the 1-10-60 rule with regards to what we believe you need in order to be successful. Sorry, Ryan, I think you've come off. Yeah, there you go. So we talked about the fact in order to be successful, we need to align to the 1-10-60 sort of mantra. The Falcon Complete team, as of last quarter, we're operating against that rule within a minute to detect something bad within a client's environment, 6 minutes to investigate, and then 20 minutes to remediate. And once we've done that, essentially what we do is we deliver back to you a remediation report, basically detailing the actions we've taken and what we've seen. So it's a really powerful sort of industrial sort of scale response capability that we're delivering. And it really drives huge results for clients. And obviously they really like it because of the fact that we're taking such sort of accountability and responsibility we're over the sort of response process, really taking on the hard work. So if we look at that timeline that we looked at the start versus sort of the way in which the Falcon Complete team operate, as I mentioned, we're looking to deliver this sort of capability within minutes. So fundamentally, we're keeping you ahead of the adversary and stopping you from being sort of victims of, let's say, a significant breach. So that's pretty much it from me. Hopefully that's given you a good overview of the certainly capability that we're able to drive. I'd be more than happy to take up sort of conversations with you individually offline. Before I sort of jump off and hand over to Mark, we've got one more poll question. So in this one, on average, what was the frequency at which the Crowdstrike threat hunting team, Overwatch, uncovered potential intrusions? So this was over the sort of last 12 months. And so the options, as you can see, are 8 minutes, every 45 minutes, or every sort of 2 hours. Perfect. So I think that's everyone answered. So the majority of you were correct. So every 8 minutes was the sort of timeline in which we witnessed sort of a potential intrusion with our Overwatch team. So that's the most significant sort of increase in frequency that we've seen, certainly year on year in terms of growth. And if you'd like to look at some more of those statistics, there's our Overwatch report, which was released, I think, 2 weeks ago, where all of this sort of information sits. So please feel free to take a look at that and have a read. It's quite interesting in terms of the content there. So Mark, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. Just give me a second to share my screen. Do you want to stop sharing?
Yeah, sure.
There we go. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Robinson. I currently work within the Falcon Complete team, and I've done so since its early inception. I primarily have a background in systems administration, but always had a security focus, whether this be like hardening servers, following best practices, designing and implementing security systems. And then I use the government-sponsored schemes such as the Cybersecurity Challenge and the SAN Cyber Academy to help me pivot over from being a sysadmin to being a cybersecurity professional. I've helped build SOCs from the ground up. Took an interest in endpoint security and raising like visibility for detection in the early days. So I now focus on responding to detections within our Falcon platform and working incidents to resolution with the team, as well as providing support to our customers in terms of the like administration and ad hoc queries. So before I go into the next session, I'm just going to cover off some basic terms that we use. So first is EAM, which is our Endpoint Activity Monitor. This acts like a SIEM solution and correlates all the activity occurring on the system. Second is RTR, which is our real-time response capability. And this allows us to run commands on a system like a virtual terminal. And then finally is containment, which generally refers to network containment. So this isolates the system from the network and it only allows it to communicate with our cloud. So I'm going to cover 2 case studies. The first involves a hands-on keyboard adversary who wants to ransomware an environment, and the other relates to the efforts taken to respond to the Exchange 0 days that occurred back in early March, and that's related to the proxy logon exploitation. So this is an example of a real-world detection our team responded to. This view is of our Crowdstrike platform, and we have drilled down into the detection, and we're viewing the Process Explorer tree of activity. So straight away, there's a bit of a wealth of knowledge here, a bit of a wealth of information to digest here, but to a trained analyst, it provides a lot of contextual evidence of a hands-on keyboard adversary. So working closely with our Overwatch team, they've already tipped us off on the right-hand side there to help us respond as fast as possible, recommending even recommending like host containment and a reset of the associated user account. So given the user account in that note there, it's ending in a 500, so that indicates to me, the analyst, that we have a local user account that was authenticated to the host. So here, the Falcon platform has prevented execution of the malicious binaries after the adversaries tried to execute them as soon as they've gained access to this box. These tools typically dropped are used to disable AV products, scan the network, map the network drives, all in preparation for ransomware activities. So this threat intelligence is automatically fed into our Overwatch team so they know what to look out for. In this case, the host was contained straight away by the Falcon Complete team, and then we phone the customer, notify them what we've seen, what our response actions were taken, and then give them any sort of actions that they are required for them to prevent it from reoccurring. So at this moment in time, our team also triage for any additional activity around this time frame to eliminate any service of any further files dropped or malicious implants that might have been placed onto the host as well. So, standard SOC teams without remote access to the host or without a 24/7 presence will really struggle here to respond to this activity. And also, like our inter-team collaboration, define playbooks and processes enable us to respond, stopping the actor in their tracks. So now this host is contained, we still have some questions that need to be answered, like what is the IP that they're coming from, and how did they get access to that local administrator account. So I'm just going to jump over to the next slide. So this slide here, this shows the power of Falcon's EAM queries. So here we've already ran a query to pull back some user logon information. So here we can see clear evidence of the adversaries brute forcing the local administrative accounts that are on the machine. In addition to this, we get context of the RDP host name. So on the left-hand side there, you've got the client computer name. This is being sent by the adversary's machine. So this kind of tips off what kind of tools it might be leveraging, all of which provides more knowledge to the analyst. So in some circumstances we can actually pinpoint the tools they are using to brute force. So this EAM query here is grouped together some of the results of failed logons, but also a cluster of successful authenticated requests as well. So the team here identified that the successful logon amongst all the failed logons was a logon type 7, which is indicative of a system being unlocked rather than the usual type 10, what you get when you RDP onto a host. And the logon type 3 that you might see here is a network authentication. So in this instance, the administrative account was still logged into the host, and then they simply just unlocked it using the credentials the adversary had obtained through brute forcing. And here we also have the source of the activity, and it seems to be the same IP going down the screen, but these are action points we can give to the customer, and they can go and investigate and see what actually is that natted IP address, or is that a gateway, is that a VPN range, and they can help us there, pinpoint further of like where they've come from. So this eCrown case is just the beginning. So like our team has a wealth of experience in identifying, as well as like removal of like commodity malware, all the way up to APT stuff. So onto our second case is one of our substantial responses is the Exchange 0-day activity. So this chained multiple vulnerabilities to achieve code execution on Microsoft Exchange servers. So we started seeing this active exploitation back at the beginning of the year, around about early March, when we saw interaction with web shells across multiple customer environments. So we're going to show you some slides of like what we saw as this all unraveled. So here you've got an example of one of the first detections that came through to our Falcon platform. Gathering context here, we were able to conclude that there was likely web exploitation that had been used to drop a web shell, and that web shell was likely a variant of China Chopper, and the Falcon sensor has prevented a single attempt to run a command on this host. So within 10 to 15 seconds of just looking at this, we've got a rough idea from the process tree and the prevented activity that we've got some sort of web exploitation here. So clicking onto the W3WP process, this is basically IIS web server core process. We can see the application pool on the right-hand side. And this is a strong indicator of the application running based off just its name. So from here, we can enumerate the host, find the correct location of the site and any associated web logs. Just to remember that, web servers can have many websites, and even Exchange has 2 websites running. So it's critical to understand which website you're dealing with, so you get the correct logs to triage. So web exploitation isn't uncommon. Like, there's many well-known vulnerabilities that are exploited in other applications, such as Apache Tomcat, WordPress. But in this instance, we can see that we're dealing with Microsoft Exchange or Microsoft Exchange Outlook web application pool. So just before, just for a bit more further context here, from what we're seeing is just before Falcon blocks that malicious command, you see compilation of a DLL via CSC. So that's the csc.exe there. And we'll go over that in a second. Some other context that we normally see with exploitation and around Exchange, there was another critical CVE that came out just before this, CVE 2020-0688, which is a post-authentication deserialization exploit, which we have seen in the past. And that was one of our kind of like original thoughts that this could be something similar to that, if it could actually be that. So with all this kind of like background knowledge, there's a few things there we can pivot off. So as more of these detections came in, we saw attempts to run the same command, and that was obviously being blocked. So we quickly summarized that this is likely automated, and it was exploiting a vulnerability to execute code. So we wanted to really start digging in a bit deeper. So what we found was new ASPX files were being written to disk, and as these ASPX files are written to disk, .NET compiles them into a DLL, which then is used whenever the ASPX files are called. So these sit in a temporary ASP.NET folder. So it's kind of like a caching mechanism. So it's just some of the context we're seeing as well, just so we understand exactly what we are looking at. And also, like, Exchange legitimately writes ASPX files to disk as well when it's updating. So there is legitimate reasons for ASPX files to actually be written out, but possibly not in these paths. So again, just building a bit of context of what we're dealing with here. So we wanted to understand, what did these new ASPX files contain? So it looked like it was going to be a web shell because we've got that code execution already. And based on our analysis, we already concluded that this will be some sort of area of China Chopper. So we connected to this host using RTR, which is our real-time response capability, and as well as using EAM, so Endpoint Activity Monitor. We know exactly where these ASPX files are in question, so we can go and triage those. So viewing their contents revealed that this was a China Chopper web shell variant that looked like it was part of an Outlook address book configuration file. This is not normally something we would actually see. We just normally get a one-liner of China Chopper in a web shell, and that's it. But the fact it was wrapped in this configuration file was a bit odd. So to further pivot here, we gathered the application event logs for Exchange around this time of activity. And this highlighted rare informational events pointing to the ECP, which is an Exchange control panel log. So from that, we was able to highlight the commandlets being ran to change the configuration of the external URL, which is part of the Outlook address book portal, to then contain this China Chopper variant. So all these kind of like contextual events help build a picture of like what the adversary is actually exploiting, commands they're running in the background just from putting event logs. So at this point, our team was in full response mode. Although the sensor was blocking attempts to run these commands, we still wanted to contain the situation, remove the web shells, call the customers, you know, and let them know what's happening every step of the way. We began working with our customers to determine that these systems were actually already fully patched. So, you know, that then started pushing our focus to what this could be, and, you know, concentrate on digging deeper in some of the logs that we have access to. And we've detailed this quite well in our blog post that got released as well. So there's a link there at the bottom. Do check it out after it goes way more in detail than this. So every step of the way, we were trying to ensure the best possible coverage for this, and we responded without hesitation to, you know, something we don't even know what is happening. So once we've found evidence in the logs, a combination of IIS, web server logs, event logs, and Exchange web logs, and we had systems that we already knew were fully patched, and we kind of ruled out any sort of misconfiguration that was highly unlikely, as multiple customers were getting affected at the same time. We concluded we were dealing with some sort of exploit or 0-day. So I think it was this point late on a Wednesday, on the 3rd of March. So like we're talking a few days after our initial response to this, Microsoft released a blog post detailing the emergency patch in response to these in the wild use of 0 days against their Exchange servers. So, Microsoft then released the Hafnium findings emergency patch, which aligned with what we were seeing. And this was through a period where we saw active exploitation occurring globally, which our team was responding to. So, before any patches, before any signatures or information that was publicly available about this, our team was responding to this to prevent the activity in customer environments based on our own analysis. So during this time, we developed scripts to find and proactively remove the web shells, report evidence of exploitation attempts, gather IOCs, and more. The team collaboration didn't stop there. So the IOCs we were gathering from these incidents, we used in our response scripts, were then built upon by another team called Endpoint Recovery Services, who work very closely with our IR services. And their primary focus is to ultimately help those customers that have not been so lucky. So, they don't have Falcon Complete, and this wasn't prevented, and now they're just bringing in Crowdstrike, and our team are gathering the data we've got and seeing in the wild and reusing those IOCs and triage scripts to help customers out, get back on their feet. So we began straight away, because of all the wealth of information we'd gathered. We put all this into a quick blog post and reported practical actions that can be taken to mitigate this activity. So other teams within Crowdstrike released dedicated dashboards to help customers find out what systems they were vulnerable to this, and any new detections were released to help identify any sort of exploitation of this vulnerability as well. So, in all, we merged people, processes, and technology to detect and respond to this event, while many other organizations that weren't protected struggled to identify and respond in a timely manner. And as a result, they got a much bigger response actions that need to be taken place. So when dealing with these compromises, response is critical. So without having the trained analysts monitoring 24/7, 365, many organizations, protected buyers, found themselves with web shells. Well, many organizations not protected buyers found themselves with web shells, and hands-on keyboard actors carrying out post-exploitation activities. So our customers might not have the capability to respond at any time, the expertise required, or access to the threat intelligence that we have to basically actively gain context to to these detections coming in, and prevent a determined adversary that wants to get into the environment. And then this is one area we step in and continue to step in today. So without any doubt, the attack surface for Microsoft Exchange at the moment, it won't be the last. This detailed proxy logon. We saw another wave of this with proxy shell as well. So it's definitely an attack surface that might be reoccurring in future. But hopefully that's gave a really good insight to two cases that we've worked. And then I think we're going to open the floor for some questions.
Yes, we are. So I'm just going to take back control. Share my screen. Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them on the chat box. There are a couple in there already. And whilst we just wait for the last few questions to put in there, I'm just going to go through a couple of follow-ups following the session. So as mentioned, CrowdStrike have released their 2021 Global Threat Report. So that's highlighting all of the different adversaries, the threats they're seeing today, the current trends, and generally the activity. It's a great detailed document, some of the points we've discussed on today. So if you do wish to have a report of that, feel free to reach out to Bytes or download it from the CrowdStrike website. And a really successful Bytes workshop that we have been delivering for the past sort of 8 months or so is a kind of endpoint market review. So if you do have some challenges or interests around your endpoint estate and you're wishing to review the market, wishing to review the trends, then please reach out and we can go through the market review. And we can help you discover what's going to be best for your kind of challenges and requirements moving forward. So let's just move over to the questions. Okay. So a couple of questions. What does CrowdStrike find as the biggest challenge faced by clients today?
I can run with that one, Luke. So I think it's boiled down pretty simply. I think there's the investment in obviously technology and tuning that technology effectively is one part of the kind of challenge. But I think that the biggest part that we see is effectively sort of staffing that and getting access to skills and then building that capability out on a 24/7 sort of basis, I think is the biggest challenge for organizations. As I mentioned in the discussion, according to HMRC website, 48% of organizations state they've got a cyber skills gap within their organization. So that for me is the biggest thing. It's great having all this technology investment, but if you haven't got people that can interpret it or respond to it, then it's almost useless, if that makes sense. Cool.
And a kind of maybe a follow-on question. Is there a particular vertical or size of customer that the Falcon Complete service is relevant or available to?
Good question. We've got customers. So our biggest customer has about 1 million endpoints under management with us, and our smallest organizations that we work with have sort of 50 endpoints. So no is the short answer. We can cover no matter what size organization and whatever sector. We're able to get operational really quickly, and we've got the ability and obviously the processes in place to do that very quickly as well.
Perfect. I think that's the same from our side with you guys. We've got customers where 100 endpoints up to tens of thousands. So it's everywhere in between where we can add a service layer where you can't build that in-house, which is really relevant. Okay. How does CrowdStrike or Falcon products stay ahead of the game and detect new threats?
Do you want to take that one, Mark?
Yeah, good question. So it is a question that comes in quite a bit from customers, and it goes back to some of the Exchange triage we was working before there. So we have a dedicated team, detection engineering, and in that team there's a few sub teams. So they're constantly researching and creating behavioral rules to pick up some of the threats, and anything that the complete team sees. So anything in the wild that might be a slight variation. We work closely with that team to tune or improve those detections. So if something got detected lower down the process tree, we'll go back and see, well, actually, could this have been detected further or higher up? So, our behavioral templates are just one line of defense, with there's other components in there, such as machine learning as well. So, we have a team, like I said, that dedicated to researching all the latest kind of exploits coming in, as well as what we're seeing on the wild, on the front line within the complete team. And we work internally with that team all the time to improve our detections. So, it's pretty good having that access to dedicated engineers. I think that hopefully answers that one.
Yeah, great. And just from the solution point of view, as I mentioned right at the start, we've been working with Crowdstrike since 2017, I think it was, where it was just the EDR module, some threat intel, and I think you guys have probably released one, if not more, different modules every year throughout that time. So yeah, as well as the service enhancements, there's product enhancements throughout the Crowdstrike portfolio, which is really good to see, and one of the reasons why we kind of strategically partner with you guys effectively. Right, there's one other question. One of the stats I picked up: 1 minute to detect, 6 minutes to investigate, 20 minutes to remediate. What is your ratio for engineers to customers? It appears you may need to have a lot of resourcing to achieve this.
So we don't generally give specific numbers, but we've got hundreds of analysts that are covering sort of thousands of customers, and we're really efficient in the way we organize those analysts. So other sort of SOC capabilities, MSSPs, or sort of customer managed SOCs tend to operate in a tiered SOC model, which means you need resource at every level of tiering, right? So you've got tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Not only does that slow down response, that causes, I guess, challenges, as I said, with the way in which you staff that. And the only way you can improve sort of volume or scale is by adding people at every layer. So as I mentioned earlier on in our presentation, what we believe in is having analysts that are able to take an incident from start to finish. So that increases our sort of efficiency and capability from a response perspective. And then we also organize analysts in something called a fire team structure, which is like a military, I guess, taken from the military structure, where we have sort of soft teams of analysts that are all aligned in sort of Alpha, Bravo, Charlie type teams. And they'll have complementary skill sets. That means they're able to be agile and deal with any sort of situation at a client's environment at any point in time. So yes, we do need a lot of analysts for our customer base, but we're very, very clever in the way that we organize them and continually sort of monitor capacity for each of our fire teams that we run.
Thanks, Tom. Hopefully that's answered your question. I think we've got time potentially for one last question. I'm not sure what time it's supposed to be finishing, but what if there is more than one system that needs remediation?
So hopefully when we've got many systems coming in, the fire team analysts have enough resources to remediate as these detections come in. So it depends what kind of malware it is, what strain, what activity we're seeing. But sometimes we've got customers that have just onboarded, they would have quite a few detections. It might be the same kind of coin miner that might be persisting in that environment. So while we probably be able to go through a few of these detections as they come in, we can quickly look at our kill books, do we have a script we've already written that we could, slightly amend, change the, certain IOCs, paths or services that are installed, or, triage this certain WMI event consumer, and reuse that script to then go back to that customer's environment in the Falcon UI, set up a API access, and then we can mass RTR. So basically, rather than RTR into each host, and then running basically copy paste of several commands to get the job done, we can automate that, put it in a script, and then call the script using like a Python script we have that interacts with the customer's API, and then we'll remediate that piece of malware, and we can do that across tens, hundreds, thousands of boxes if needed. But our playbooks are all QA'd. The scripts that are written are checked over by our senior analysts. So any sort of like mass remediation is done with a lot of scrutiny, because we don't want any sort of downtime or users being affected by this. So this is something we've done since day one, and it's very, very effective in normalizing customer environments, as well as if something's coming into the queues, we've got that ability to hit back really. So yeah, mass remediation is possible, but normally we have the analysts to do it, and very rarely do we see a massive wave of stuff coming in. But as with the Exchange stuff, you never know what's going to be around the corner, and it's good having this capability ready to pull the trigger. So yeah, that's a good question. Hopefully that's answered it.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, I think it's about time we had to wrap up today for the sessions that are upcoming. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mark, for your time today. Really appreciate it. Some great content there. And as mentioned at the start, if you do want to hear more, then we've got more threat series throughout the 3 days, and the recordings will be sent to you for this webinar tomorrow morning. So yeah, thank you for your time. Have a great day.